Hey residents of Meepletown, today we are comparing Carpe Diem with Carpe Diem. So this is the older version of the game. This is the newer, graphically upgraded version of the game. And what I want to do is I'm just going to do a comparison video of the different components you're going to get in here, some of the differences, and which one I think is the better version. So let's get to the table and check out Carpe Diem. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is show off the boards here, and this is the older version of the board. This is the newer version of the board. And actually, kind of before we even get into that, I wanted to point out to the fact that we actually did a review of Carpe Diem with your original version of the game, which is actually even different than this one right here. So this is the more upgraded one since we did the review. A side note, I really enjoyed the game quite a bit. I really like Carpe Diem, but if you remember, if you did watch this, you know that John and I's biggest complaints about this game was the graphic design and some of the design choices with the artwork, and hopefully with the newer revision, some of that has been fixed. But this version is really similar to the original one, other than the fact that if you watch the video, you know that when you were going from this space up to this space, for example, you would go across the board and it had all these lines drawn to different spaces on the board that you can go to. Well, this one, it actually changes that, where instead of going across the board, you're actually going to be going next to the spot. And this version is the same as that. They kept that in the newest version of Carpe Diem, but I do think it becomes a little more clear here. You know, you got these arrows on here pointing to where everything's going. Both have the wood grain in the background kind of behind these sheets. I just think that this one is done better. I think the wood grain on this looks more real than what it does on this one. It kind of pops a little bit more too. And the same thing with these victory point areas where you're gonna have these cards laid out, and that's how you're gonna get victory points based on paying the resources or paying what's needed to complete those. Everything just seems much more clear on this board, and the artwork, in my opinion, is just better. I enjoy it better. This board tends to pop more than what this one does. Personal opinion on that one, but anyway, that's the board. Now I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. We're gonna focus a little bit more. We're gonna look at some of the components of the game and see why some of the differences in those. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just show off some of the resources. I'm going to be laying them out there, and the components, not just the resources, but all the components that we have in the game. First thing I've got is the resource board, and I've got the older board up top here, the newer one down here, and some of these, in my mind, it's really a no-brainer, just on the design of them, the clarity, but also just the artwork. The artwork on the newer one, you're going to see across the board is just better. I don't know how else to say that. I feel like it's so much better. Here you've got this nice little circle, looks like maybe a nest where you're keeping the things. This is, you know, it shows the picture of all the resources on there, but the design, it's just not my favorite. I feel like it's more artistic on this on the newer version, and so definitely my vote, and for most of this, for most of the new stuff, it's going to be what I like better. And so again, this one is the one that is the better version for me. So that is the resource boards. I'll just quickly show these. What are they called? These are the district boards. So I'm not going to leave those up for very long. They're actually not a really big difference. They're pretty similar. It's just those scrolls pop more on this. So those are the RIP tokens that will come out. These will go on there, and this is for the newer version, which pop more. It's a lot easier to see than the old version is, and so I definitely prefer that as well. We've got, let me throw some of these cards up there. So I'm going to throw the cards from the older version up there. We've got a well card up there. Fountain, not well. Right here, then we've got a couple of the point cards there, the victory point cards. Then I'm just going to throw up the exact same card from the newer version. The design on both of them is really well, and you've got these indentions where you're going to put your markers on there to show, you're going to be showing what, where you're going to place your markers. So like if these two match up, then you will put the marker there to show that you're going to score on both of those. And so The design for the market, I think, is easier to see. It's prettier to look at as well. And just overall, I feel like this is, again, it's a more artistic approach. The art is better, in my opinion, again, on these. Without having the same texture, they went a lot with the texture on the art on the older version. But again, I kind of prefer, or much prefer, the newer version of that for the cards. The other thing that's not really a big deal, you've got the coins and the bread tokens. So the newer version here and the older version here, honestly, they're pretty close. That, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, in my opinion, not worth really changing anything for that. But I do overall kind of prefer the newer version of that. And the last thing I'm going to do, well, actually, let me throw up some of these border tiles real fast. We've got the newer version there, the older version here, and overall, they're pretty similar. Again, the art is a little bit better. Things tend to pop on the newer version just a little bit more overall. So I prefer it, but again, not worth a big overhaul of the game just to change that. Now, I will say the biggest difference, two of the biggest differences, is the way that these tiles, the way that the tile backs look. So in the older version, you had to be able to keep two separate tiles out. The darker ones and the lighter ones needed to be kept out separately. It could be an issue, and John and I had some issues every time that we were setting out the older version of the game. The new one is just black and white. Literally, it's black and white. The difference between these, you don't need to be thinking, is this a light green or a dark green? Why not? You're not going to be able to, why not put the darker white and black colors on there, because you're not going to see them anyway. So anyway, in my mind, that just works much better. And then we're going to flip some of these over. I'll put some of the old version ones up here first, just kind of randomly set up out here. And then I'm going to put the matching tile on here as well with the newer version. And what you're going to notice is there's this feeling to the older version that is like this pixelated art on there. And so I think the idea was, going for clarity, and hopefully that was, what the feel would look like. But then when you compare it again to the newer one, you're going to see a big difference in just the style of the art tends to be much better without losing the clarity. That's the thing. You're not losing the clarity on any of it. I would say with one exception, I guess. There is an exception with the bakery, I think, where it might be a little more difficult to see, but in comparison to the other ones, it's not a big deal. So you got the bakery here. This one has the orange marker on there to show. This one has the yellow marker on the market to show what the tile is. But in my opinion, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but that could be harder to see specifically for the bakery. Definitely not the market. The market is very clear. I would say even clearer than the older version. But these are all maybe not all of them, but that's a lot of the different types of buildings that you see on there. Another complaint that John and I had was this tile specifically. I forget the names of all these now, but the yellow and the brown can be really close, and I feel like they're differentiated much better in the newer version with still having the texture on there and just some extra detail in the tiles. You've got bushes here, along the lake here. There's just a lot of extra details in the art that I think really make the game pop quite a bit. So that's just a look at the some of the components, which is again the big issue that John and I had with this game that I know that I did for sure was the difficulty of seeing the components. It's just not a very pretty game to look at. With the new version of this, it is so pretty to look at. I think it's really well done. I really hats off to the changes that were made to make this game look so much better, and one that you might want to now pick up. I think it did turn off a lot of people initially, just the look of it. But now I think that should change based on all the changes that were made. So I really recommend this game. Carpe Diem is a lot of fun. Even without the changes, the game was a lot of fun. But I just think it was enhanced so much. And again, hats off for making those changes. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can go to mapletowngames.com. You can also reach out to us on social media at Mapletown Games, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also go to the Board Game Geek Guild number 3407. And also, if you'd like to donate to Meepletown, you can back us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Meepletown. Until next time, thanks for coming down to Meepletown. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to follow us on Twitter @Meepletown Games, and connect with us on the Meepletown Guild, Guild number 3407, at BoardGameGeek.com, and also subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. And until next time, thanks for coming down to Meepletown.